you very much. More in the warehouse. All right, I like that. I hadn't heard that one before, but a little wisdom from Brother Benny. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ralph, for inviting me to be back, and thank you all for being here today. I wanted to come with a special message. It's a message I've been delivering really since a year ago at the Value Voter Summit, when I talked about how we as a movement have to identify the fact that as a movement we have not been connecting with the people who are hurting in this country and providing them a message and a plan for them to embrace and live the American dream. The bottom line in America is a lot of people are struggling right now. There's a lot of disillusionment. There's a lot of people who feel like America's heading on the wrong track for very good reasons. Ralph just listed a whole bunch of them as to the problems that are confronting this country. But as conservatives and as value voters, our message, in my opinion, over the past 20, 30 years has gotten a little stale and has gotten out of step with where America's problems are. We are a party, we are a movement that continues to focus on certain issues that I believe are, well, let's just say not as relevant to average Americans as they used to be. We used to be a movement, if you looked at least for me, as a voting perspective, you had folks that, if you looked at our voting patterns, that suburban areas used to be very strong conservative areas and elected Republicans. Cities were not so good. Now that's not the case anymore. In fact, the conservative movement is no longer the movement of the corporate boardroom or the country club. In fact, the vast majority of our supporters are the folks who hold traditional values like you, and they're not business people, they're workers. They're people who work for a living for somebody else. But if you listen to the message that we've been delivering for the past 30 or 40 years, we don't talk about workers. I mentioned in the speech last year at the National Convention 2 years ago how we spent an entire day on the subject of "you didn't build that," and talked about how one business owner after another came up to the podium talking about, yes, we did build that. Do you ever think about how many business owners there are in America versus how many workers there are in America? Do you ever think about who's struggling most in America with stagnant wages and falling behind with inflation and a lack of opportunity? It's probably the 70% of Americans who don't have college degrees, but if you listen to the message that we've been delivering, it's all about the business owner, it's all about the corporation, it's a lot about Wall Street, and it's not about average working Americans. That's why I decided after the speech last year to write a book called Blue Collar Conservatives. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's the future for America. We have to start to be the country again that believes in everybody in America rising. And we have to have a game plan that doesn't say, well, if businesses do really well, everybody else is going to do well. Well, that just isn't been the case. We see Wall Street at new highs, real estate values climbing, and average Americans not doing so well and not feeling like anybody cares about them. In the last election, 23% of the people at the exit polls said the most important issue for them was, does this candidate care about people like me? And guess who those people were who were asking, who that was their most important issue? They were average, lower, and middle income people. And guess how our candidate did as to whether he cared about people like them? He got 19% of that vote. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to win very many elections if people don't think we care about them. If the average American doesn't think that we have an agenda and a message for them. You know what the most popular word is in everybody's lexicon? Their own name. Everybody loves to hear their own name. Yet when we get up and paint a picture for America, we go up and talk about tax cuts, balanced budgets, right? We talk about reining in the size and scale of government. I'm for all those things. I'm for pro-growth policies. But where in that picture is the average American? Where's their name? You see, we have to start painting a picture that includes their name. so they can see themselves in that great artwork of America. And this is where I think some elements of our party don't understand how important two major issues are. Number one, values. You see, those folks that I've been talking about, they agree with us on values. They know the importance of life and marriage. They know the importance of strong values and virtue in their communities. In fact, you know that every family in America is a little business. If you think about it, every family unit runs a business. They have revenues and expenditures. They have to operate. They have to balance their budgets. And when those little family units are not functioning well, the economy doesn't function well. You know, the word economy comes from the Greek word oikos, which means home. The first economy is the home. And yet you see many people in our party and in the movement who don't want to fight for the most basic institution that holds the family together, and that's the institution of marriage. You people who don't understand the value of having two people in that home raising children and providing for the next generation as a much more efficient economic unit. I shared during the campaign that if you do three things in America, if you work, if you graduate from high school, and you get married before you have children, you have less than a 2% chance of ever being in poverty in America. Yet you never hear either party out there talking about marriage, not the definition of marriage, but reclaiming marriage for the good that it is for our economy and our country. Marriage is an institution that helps our country. You want limited government? You want more married people and stable families in America. Marriage is a public good. And if you think about the policies that the other side has put in place and we have tacitly agreed with, it actually stops people from getting married. Our tax code is anti-marriage. Our benefit structures. You heard this year or last year when they were talking about Obamacare, how Obamacare discourages work, right? It discourages work because the more money you make, the less subsidy you get, and therefore you actually are worse off by the more you work. That's also true with all welfare benefits. It discourages work. It discourages the one thing you know will get you out of poverty. But let me tell you what else happens with these benefits. It discourages marriage. I was in Wisconsin during the campaign, and a guy's running for the Congress right now, Glenn Grothman, showed me a document in Wisconsin that if you're a single mom with 2 children making $15,000 a year, in Wisconsin you were eligible for $38,000 in government benefits. But if you got married, you lost them all. Now think of the economic decisions that we are forcing upon women trying to raise children who would like to be in a relationship, a married relationship, but cannot because it's economically devastating for her and her children. What are we doing? And are anyone fighting on this? Do you hear any Republicans or conservatives fighting to say, we need to help people, encourage people to get married, form families, have fathers involved and men involved in the lives of raising children, because children need mothers and fathers. We need to have an agenda that speaks across the economic spectrum. We need to be the party of the worker, not just the party of business. We need to be the movement that says we want to make things in America again. You want to create wealth and opportunity. There was a company that sold a few months ago called WhatsApp. It sold for $19 billion. You know how many employees WhatsApp had? 55. Now imagine a $19 billion manufacturing company. How many employees? How many households? How many wages? How many communities would that manufacturing facility support? People say, oh, that's old technology, those days are past. No, they're not. We can still make things in America if we create an economic environment where manufacturers can be profitable. A lot of manufacturers want to move back from overseas, having tried that experiment and found that government instability, patent protections, legal protections just aren't what they are. Let's be a party that says we want to make things in America. We want to have strong families and communities. We want to create energy to keep lower our costs down. We want to build the infrastructure of America so the 70% of Americans who don't have college degrees can have jobs that can sustain their families. That's a vision for America. It's about good, solid family values, good, hard work for people who want to work 9 to 5. And by the way, Republicans, it's okay, and conservatives, it's okay for people just to work 9 to 5 and have the opportunity to raise a family on the wages that you make just working 8 hours a day. It's a good thing for us to be on the side of the worker. We have an opportunity right now. We're at a crisis point as a movement. We're trying to go, which way are we going to go? How are we going to define ourselves? Because I can tell you, look at the polls. They don't like any of us. They don't like Republicans or Democrats. They know Democrats are just promising the world and stealing their money and leading them down to a culture of decay. But they don't think we care about them. Why? Because we never talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to start talking to America again. Ronald Reagan is always the person we go back to. Ronald Reagan would be appalled. We would be appalled today if all we were saying is, well, we need to do what we did 40 years ago. If that's our movement, Ronald Reagan didn't go in 1980 and say, oh, we need to go back and look at what the Republicans did 40 years ago. No, he looked at the problems of our time. One of his famous quotes is, government isn't the answer, government is the problem. But here's what he said at the beginning of that quote: in this current crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a different crisis in America. We have a crisis of people in the middle of America feeling disconnected to this country and the opportunity that it can provide. And if we're not the party, and if we're not the movement that's providing a way out and a vision that's good and true and based on family and work and education, vocational education, technical schools, if we aren't that movement, then we are lost and the country is lost. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity to help transform America. Let's start it today. Thank you and God bless you.